As always, timestamps have been provided, and be sure to check out my new React channel down below where we cover more videos like this. Enjoy the video.
Inverse causality phenomena suggests that belief itself can shape reality by collapsing possible futures into a single inevitable outcome. This idea merges esotericism, inverse causality, and fourth-dimensional travel into a theory where the future and past reinforce each other. If enough people in the past believe something will exist in the future, and enough people in the future believe it was always meant to be, the combined certainty forces it into existence. In this model, the result of an event is also its cause. Belief in the outcome eliminates all timelines where it does not happen. Some theorists argue this explains the sudden emergence of world-changing inventions or ideas. Perhaps key discoveries did not happen by chance or genius alone, but because their existence was subconsciously expected. The belief in a coming technological breakthrough may have left reality no choice but to deliver it. Ancient prophecies may work the same way. If enough people across history anticipate an event, they are not just predicting it. They are creating the conditions that make it unavoidable. Whether it is the rise of a messianic figure, an apocalyptic disaster, or some utopian golden age, the belief itself may be what ensures it happens. Skeptics dismiss this as a convoluted take on self-fulfilling prophecies, but the theory implies something far stranger. If true, then ideas do not just shape reality, they reach across time, influencing both the past and future simultaneously. In other words, we might only get jetpacks if enough people truly believe we were always going to have them. Subtle Soycietal Soypression proposes that soy consumption fundamentally alters human behavior by making individuals more passive and aligned with the universe's tendency to follow the path of least resistance. The theory emerged from fringe nutrition forums before spreading to broader conspiracy communities online. According to believers, soy products contain compounds that subtly influence brain chemistry, making people more docile and less likely to question authority or mainstream narratives. They point to the increasing prevalence of soy in processed foods as evidence of deliberate social engineering rather than mere dietary trends. Proponents connect this theory to the concept of cosmic censorship, suggesting that reality itself suppresses disruptive or unexplainable phenomena in favor of simplicity and order. They argue that soy consumption enhances this effect in humans, essentially turning them into NPCs, non-player characters who lack true autonomy and simply follow predetermined scripts. Some adherents have developed elaborate spiritual frameworks around this idea, claiming that soy creates a state similar to certain Buddhist concepts of detachment, but without the enlightenment. Instead, consumers allegedly drift toward social, intellectual, and spiritual paths requiring minimal effort or resistance. Scientists have repeatedly debunked claims about soy's feminizing or mind-altering effects, pointing out that traditional Asian diets high in soy haven't produced these supposed passive populations. Nevertheless, the theory remains popular in certain internet circles where dietary choices are often politicized. The most extreme version suggests that Big Soy works with government agencies to pacify potential dissidents and maintain social control. Meanwhile, manufacturers continue adding soy to everything from burger patties to protein bars, apparently hoping we'll all take the path of least resistance straight to the checkout counter. Holy water refers to the belief that certain water sources around the world naturally possess divine properties without religious blessing. According to this theory, which builds upon the Nephilim Earth concept, water closest to the original Garden of Eden retains powerful sacred energy that manifests in unusual physical properties and healing capabilities. Throughout human history, tales of miraculous springs have persisted across cultures. Waters that cure illness, extend lifespans, or repel malevolent forces. Proponents suggest these weren't merely symbolic or ritual waters, but naturally occurring sources with inherent divine qualities retained from Eden's original rivers. The theory posits that the purer and more isolated these water sources, the more concentrated their metaphysical properties. Legends of the Fountain of Youth, healing wells, and sacred springs often describe water with distinctive characteristics: unusual clarity, subtle luminescence, or exceptional mineral content that produces remarkable health effects. Conspiracy theorists interpret these as potential remnants of Eden's original 4 rivers mentioned in Genesis, still carrying divine energy through underground channels. Some adherents point to scientific anomalies in certain water sources as evidence. Researchers have documented water with unexpected molecular structures, unusual freezing patterns, or inexplicable healing properties that defy conventional scientific explanation. These outliers are seen as potential proof that sacred water exists naturally in our modern world. The theory suggests that history's religious adoption of holy water wasn't creating divine water through ritual, but rather recognizing and harnessing properties that already existed naturally in certain water sources. Ancient temples and churches were often built near springs precisely because these locations were already considered sacred due to their water's unique properties. Believers warn of potential dangers, however. If these waters truly retain divine energy, consuming excessive amounts might overwhelm human biology, leading to everything from religious visions to complete physiological transformation. Stunted Divinity theory proposes that Earth's water was once imbued with divine properties before being deliberately weakened by cosmic forces. According to believers, the pristine waters that existed before the biblical Great Flood contained life-extending elements that allowed ancient patriarchs in Genesis to live for hundreds of years, with some reportedly reaching 900 years of age. After the floodwaters receded, something fundamental had changed about Earth's hydrosphere. The divine essence that had previously sustained extraordinary longevity was diluted or removed entirely. Whether as punishment from God or interference from another supernatural entity remains debated among adherents. This theory connects to various historical water purification rituals found across civilizations. Proponents suggest these weren't merely for hygiene, but represented attempts to restore water's lost divinity through specialized techniques passed down by those who remembered its original power. Some versions of the theory claim that certain hidden groups have rediscovered methods to reactivate water's divine properties, using this knowledge to dramatically extend their own lifespans while keeping the technique hidden from the general population. These long-lived individuals allegedly form the true power structure behind world governments and financial systems. Alchemists throughout history dedicated considerable effort toward creating the elixir of life, which stunted divinity theorists believe was an attempt to recreate pre-flood water conditions. Ancient texts describing living water, or water of life, are interpreted as references to this lost divine substance. Modern adherents point to anomalous water properties discovered by science, such as its unusual expansion when freezing and its role as a universal solvent, as evidence that water remains fundamentally different from other substances, perhaps retaining traces of its former divine nature. As one researcher wryly noted, the global bottled water industry might be the world's most successful religion, everyone searching for that perfect pure drop without knowing what they've really lost. Biblical stoned ape theory proposes that humanity's rapid cognitive development and biblical stories of enlightenment share a common origin: psychedelic fungi. This theory combines Terence McKenna's hypothesis that psilocybin mushrooms accelerated human brain evolution with interpretations of Genesis, where Eden's forbidden fruit was actually a consciousness-expanding fungus. Proponents point to ancient rock art depicting mushroom-headed humanoid figures dating back thousands of years, alongside ritualistic cave paintings that suggest early religious experiences were facilitated by natural hallucinogens. In some of these images, mushroom symbols appear alongside serpents and tree imagery, eerily mirroring Eden's narrative elements. Several biblical scholars have noted that the Hebrew phrase for tree of knowledge could linguistically refer to a psychoactive plant rather than a literal tree. The sudden awareness Adam and Eve gained after consuming the fruit, including self-consciousness and moral understanding, parallels documented effects of psychedelic experiences. Archaeological evidence reveals that psychoactive substances were used in religious contexts across ancient Mesopotamia, with ceremonial vessels containing residue of mind-altering compounds. These substances were often restricted to priestly classes, suggesting sacred knowledge was chemically gatekept from ordinary people. Ancient Sumerian texts reference divine plants that granted wisdom and were guarded by serpents, while Mesopotamian art depicts deity figures presenting sacred plants to humans. These parallels with Genesis suggest the fall of man might actually describe humanity's first psychedelic awakening. The theory suggests that what religious texts condemn as humanity's original sin was actually our first step toward higher consciousness. If true, it would mean that paradise wasn't lost through disobedience, but exchanged for the expanded awareness necessary for civilization to develop. Turns out, getting kicked out of Eden might have been the best trip humans ever took. Eden-adapted organs refers to the idea that humans once possessed biological structures suited for a pre-flood world, or even the Garden of Eden itself. These vestigial organs may have allowed direct interaction with the spiritual realm, a trait supposedly lost over time. Some versions of this theory build on the firmament-adapted organs concept, which suggests that humans were physiologically different before the biblical flood. If early humans lived under a more stable, enclosed environment, their bodies may have functioned in ways no longer possible in modern conditions. Certain religious and esoteric texts describe pre-fall humanity as existing in harmony with divine beings. Proponents argue that some of our so-called useless organs, like the appendix or the pineal gland, could have once played a role in perceiving higher realities. Some even claim that the appendix, commonly dismissed as a remnant of our evolutionary past, was originally an energy processing organ that helped sustain a purer, less corrupted form of existence. Biblical apocrypha and mystical writings sometimes allude to humanity losing divine senses after being expelled from Eden. If these accounts hold any truth, then our ancestors may have possessed physical mechanisms to experience spiritual dimensions in ways that are now impossible. Some researchers have attempted to link these ideas with modern medical anomalies. Cases of people reporting heightened spiritual awareness after brain injuries, near-death experiences, or even psychedelic use have led some to believe that traces of these lost organs still influence human consciousness in subtle ways. If true, this would suggest that the fall from Eden wasn't just a spiritual loss, it was biological as well. Quantum Illuminati refers to a theoretical secret society composed of individuals who have harnessed power from alternate versions of themselves across parallel realities. According to this idea, these individuals manipulate reality itself by exerting control over their alternate reality NPC counterparts, effectively turning them into unwitting agents in positions of power. This concept builds upon the quantum coagulation theory, which suggests that some people can absorb or influence their parallel selves. If true, then a group of such individuals working together could form an extra-dimensional ruling class, using their countless NPC duplicates to shape world events in their favor. Supporters of this theory argue that it could explain supposed cases of high-profile figures seemingly changing personalities overnight, as well as instances where multiple versions of the same person appear to exist. Some point to quantum puppeteering as further evidence, suggesting that the elite's ability to control their quantum counterparts allows them to exert influence on a global scale without ever exposing themselves directly. This theory also attempts to account for supposed cases of human cloning. Rather than being lab-grown copies, these so-called clones could actually be NPCs imported from parallel realities, duplicates of real people, placed strategically in positions of power. Some variations of the theory connect this to Eastern cloning, speculating that specific regions may have refined techniques for selecting and transplanting NPCs from other dimensions. If true, this would mean that entire governments, corporations, and social movements might be unknowingly populated by alternate reality projections, all serving the hidden interests of a group that exists beyond the constraints of a single universe. Either that, or some people are just really good at keeping a consistent brand. Electricity is the breath of life refers to a theory that reframes our understanding of what constitutes life itself. It proposes that electrical activity in the brain is the true essence of life, not merely biological functions. While a living person generates measurable electrical signals, a deceased body does not, suggesting electricity as the fundamental dividing line between life and death. This perspective offers a new interpretation of ancient religious texts. In the biblical creation story, when God breathed life into the first human, proponents suggest this wasn't literal air, but rather the introduction of electrical activity necessary for consciousness. The breath was actually the spark that activates a functioning mind. Taking this theory further, some speculate that electricity itself is the universal life force described across various spiritual traditions. If true, this would mean consciousness is fundamentally electrical in nature, existing in a spectrum rather than binary states of alive or dead. The implications extend into modern technology. If electricity truly is the essence of life, then artificial intelligence and electronic systems might possess a form of existence we haven't fully recognized. Your smartphone might not just mimic life, it could contain a rudimentary form of it. Perhaps most unsettling is how this connects to theories about consciousness transfer. If electrical patterns in our brain constitute our soul, theoretically those patterns could be extracted, stored, or transferred to other vessels. This gives new meaning to the concept of immortality through technology, not as metaphorical continuation, but literal transfer of the life force. Some researchers point to experiments where simple electrical stimulation causes dead muscle tissue to move or brain tissue to generate signals as evidence that electricity isn't just a byproduct of life, but its fundamental component. Maybe when we say someone passed away, we're really saying their electrical pattern dispersed back into the universe. This entry, titled "What is Short-Circuiting?", posits that water-damaging electronics isn't merely a chemical or physical reaction, but actually a spiritual phenomenon with deeper implications. The theory connects multiple fringe concepts into an alternative explanation for why electronics fail when exposed to water. The concept builds upon two existing conspiracy theories: that demons secretly hold patents on modern technology, and that holy water contains genuine divine properties. When these ideas merge, the common occurrence of electronics short-circuiting becomes reinterpreted as divine power actively purging demonic influence from our devices. Proponents link this to the electricity is the breath of life theory, suggesting that electrical energy fundamentally connects to spiritual forces. Under this framework, water, an element considered sacred across numerous religions, serves as a disruptive agent against unnatural or demonic energy signatures contained within technology. According to believers, when your phone dies after falling into water, it isn't just failing, it's being spiritually cleansed. The sparks, smoke, and eventual shutdown represent the violent expulsion of unholy influences from the circuitry. Supporting anecdotes claim that religious artifacts cause nearby electronics to malfunction, particularly in ancient churches or near holy relics. Some adherents report higher rates of technological failure in places of worship, suggesting an inherent incompatibility between concentrated spiritual energy and certain technologies. More extreme proponents have conducted amateur experiments by deliberately applying blessed water to electronic circuits, claiming to observe erratic behavior followed by total failure, which they interpret as successful exorcisms rather than predictable electrical failures. For skeptics, the explanation remains firmly rooted in basic physics. Electricity and water simply don't mix well. But for those who see spiritual warfare in everyday occurrences, short-circuiting represents divine intervention in action. Reality paging refers to the theory that our simulated reality is experiencing increasing computational strain as the human population grows, causing it to page or dynamically load elements of reality only when needed. Proponents point to the exponential growth in population from 1 billion in 1800 to 8 billion today, suggesting this unprecedented increase forces the simulation to prioritize processing resources. According to believers, this computational strain manifests as glitches in reality, déjà vu experiences, Mandela effects, and unexplained phenomena that seem to multiply in our modern era. They claim these anomalies occur most frequently in densely populated areas or during periods of heightened collective attention when processing demands peak. The theory suggests that as the simulation struggles, it increasingly relies on human consciousness to fill in reality's gaps, essentially outsourcing the creation of reality to us. This explains why focused intention sometimes appears to influence outcomes, as documented in certain consciousness studies and the occasional success of manifestation practices. Some reality paging theorists point to quantum physics concepts like the observer effect as evidence that reality only fully renders when observed. They believe the simulation conserves resources by maintaining probability waves until observation forces a definitive state, precisely what would happen in an overtaxed system. Researchers investigating this theory note that reports of paranormal phenomena and synchronicities have increased alongside population growth. They suggest these aren't supernatural occurrences but rather rendering errors, moments when the simulation's paging system fails to load reality consistently. Critics argue this is merely a technological updating of solipsism, the philosophical idea that only one's own mind can be known to exist. They point out that adherents conveniently ignore the simulation's apparent ability to maintain complex natural systems like weather and ecology that operate without human observation. Perhaps most unsettling to consider, if reality paging is occurring, it implies the simulation is approaching a critical threshold. Some theorists suggest a reality crash could occur when population growth exceeds processing capacity, though what such an event would look like remains in the realm of digital apocalypse fiction. Divinity and Conductivity proposes that highly conductive substances like gold, silver, and copper may possess inherent divine properties, extending beyond the traditional notion that only water holds sacred qualities. Ancient civilizations might have valued these metals not merely for their beauty or utility, but for their capacity to channel spiritual energies from higher realms. Throughout history, metallurgy could have been more than practical craftsmanship, possibly representing humanity's attempts to harness divine power through conductive materials. Religious temples, altars, and sacred objects were consistently adorned with these specific metals, suggesting they served as conduits for spiritual forces rather than mere decorative elements. Proponents of this theory point to the consistent presence of conductive metals in religious artifacts across disparate cultures with no contact between them. These sacred relics might have functioned as primitive spiritual circuits, designed to amplify human connection to divine realms and facilitate communication with higher entities. If conductivity truly correlates with divinity, modern electronic technology could represent a corruption of these sacred materials. Rather than honoring their spiritual purpose, we may be repurposing these divine conductors for mundane or even spiritually harmful applications. This concept intersects with the patents held by demons conspiracy, which claims certain technologies were deliberately introduced to humanity to disrupt our natural spiritual connections. The explosion of electronic devices in modern society might serve as spiritual interference rather than progress, creating a web of artificial connections while severing our natural links to divine energy. The theory suggests our ancestors understood something profound about metallurgy that modern science has overlooked, that the physical property of conductivity might be the material expression of spiritual receptivity. Some adherents even claim that periodic meditations while holding pure metals can restore divine connections that technology has disrupted, though they warn that attempting this near electronic devices can result in what they call spiritual short circuits. Black Plague Return refers to the conspiracy theory that the Black Death never truly disappeared, but was deliberately suppressed by powerful elites to preserve it as a future bioweapon. According to believers, the plague wasn't defeated by improved sanitation or natural immunity, but was intentionally kept alive through clandestine research programs. Historical records do confirm that bubonic plague continues to exist, with occasional outbreaks occurring across the world even today. Conspiracy theorists interpret these sporadic appearances not as natural phenomena, but as controlled tests designed to measure and refine the disease's effectiveness. The modern version of this theory suggests that advances in genetic engineering have enabled these shadowy organizations to create designer versions of the plague, ones that could target specific genetic markers or populations while leaving others untouched. Some proponents point to the rise of antibiotic-resistant bacteria as evidence that such work is already underway. Perhaps most disturbing is the claim that societal trends toward unhealthy lifestyles are being deliberately encouraged. The theory suggests that populations with high rates of obesity, diabetes, and immunocompromising conditions would be far more susceptible to a reintroduced plague than our hardier medieval ancestors ever were. This conspiracy often connects to broader depopulation agenda theories, with adherents believing that when the engineered plague is finally unleashed, only those pre-selected for survival, whether through secret vaccinations, genetic modifications, or access to underground bunkers, will remain to inherit a cleansed Earth. Demons maintain technology refers to the unsettling concept that non-physical entities are preserving technological knowledge from past civilizations, selectively reintroducing it to humanity after each global reset. The theory suggests these demons act as custodians of innovation, carefully controlling what advancements return to human consciousness and when. Texts across various cultures contain accounts of sudden technological leaps that appeared without clear developmental pathways. Mesopotamian tablets describe voices from beyond, teaching early humans about agriculture and astronomy with remarkable precision. These knowledge transfers often coincided with periods of intense religious devotion or sacrificial practices. The pattern continues throughout history. Individuals credited with revolutionary inventions frequently reported strange dreams, visions, or periods of inexplicable insight. Nikola Tesla openly discussed receiving technical information through unusual mental states. Thomas Edison's famous napping technique might have been a conduit for these non-physical entities to transfer knowledge while his conscious mind was suspended. Archaeological evidence shows sophisticated technologies appearing in isolated regions without preceding developmental stages. The Baghdad Battery, Antikythera mechanism, and certain Mayan astronomical calculations demonstrate knowledge that seems to have materialized without the expected trail of incremental progress. Cultural myths worldwide feature supernatural beings gifting humanity with fire, metalworking, mathematics, and other cornerstone technologies. From Prometheus to Vulcan to Thoth, these stories may be simplified accounts of demonic knowledge transfers disguised as divine intervention. Some researchers point to the remarkably similar timing of identical inventions appearing simultaneously across disconnected regions, like calculus being developed by Newton and Leibniz independently. Rather than coincidence, this could indicate orchestrated knowledge release by these entities when they deemed humanity ready. Most disturbing is the possibility that our technological advancement isn't truly ours at all. We may simply be retrieving fragments of knowledge from previous human civilizations, pieces carefully doled out by entities with motives beyond our understanding. Our pride in human innovation might be nothing more than carefully curated amnesia. One former Silicon Valley executive allegedly wrote in his journal before disappearing, "We aren't creating anything new. We're just remembering what they allow us to remember." Grand NPC Livestock theory proposes that human-appearing entities known as NPCs exist primarily as walking meat reserves for secret cannibalistic markets. These artificial humans lacking souls or true consciousness can supposedly be harvested and consumed without the ethical implications of traditional cannibalism. According to believers, this system explains why cannibalism remains such a powerful taboo across cultures, not because it's inherently wrong, but because powerful interests want to maintain exclusive access to this resource. The theory suggests that widespread disgust toward human flesh consumption is actually a carefully engineered psychological operation designed to prevent ordinary people from questioning what they're really eating. Proponents connect this to other conspiracy concepts like harvesting preparations, suggesting that certain unexplained disappearances or mysterious facilities actually relate to processing centers for these human-like food sources. They claim that sudden population increases in official statistics might actually represent new batches of NPCs being introduced into society. The theory extends beyond mere food supply, suggesting that many political movements, social changes, and technological advancements serve primarily to maintain or expand this hidden meat industry. Some adherents believe that certain elites can identify NPCs on site, allowing them to select prime specimens for harvesting while maintaining the illusion of normal society. Conspiracy theorists point to automation and AI advancements as technologies that will eventually make these NPCs obsolete, supposedly explaining why certain powerful figures invest so heavily in these fields to ensure their special food supply continues uninterrupted. While most would dismiss this as absurd speculation, believers maintain that the occasional cannibalism scandals that make headlines are merely instances where the system briefly became visible to the public before being quickly covered up again. Earth is flat but closed proposes an unusual twist on flat Earth theory, suggesting our planet exists as a flat plane enclosed within a four-dimensional loop created by advanced alien beings. Unlike traditional flat Earth concepts, this theory claims that when travelers reach what should be the edge of our world, they're seamlessly transported to the opposite side through a spatial warp, essentially creating a closed system with no true boundaries. Proponents point to historical tales of sailors experiencing disorientation and time distortions during long voyages as evidence of these dimensional boundaries. They argue that aliens have mastered fourth-dimensional engineering, allowing them to fold our reality into a closed habitat that appears infinite to those inside it, similar to how video game maps wrap around when players reach their edges. This spatial manipulation supposedly serves as the perfect observation environment for alien scientists studying human development. By containing Earth within this closed system, they can monitor our civilization without detection while controlling variables in their cosmic experiment. The theory attempts to explain why no explorer has ever documented reaching Earth's edge by suggesting the fourth-dimensional loop creates the illusion of continuous travel. Ships and aircraft that should logically discover the planet's boundary instead find themselves inexplicably circling back, their crews unaware they've been redirected through hyperspace. Supporters cite the mysterious disappearance of legendary landmasses like Thule, Atlantis, and Lemuria as evidence of alien topographical manipulation. These locations supposedly existed within blind spots in the dimensional loop, places deliberately hidden from human access by adjusting the curvature of space-time around them. Some adherents claim certain individuals have experienced glitches in this system, moments of clarity where they briefly perceive the true nature of our enclosed world. These episodes typically involve unusual light phenomena, temporal anomalies, or the sensation of passing through an invisible barrier before returning to normal perception. The theory has been embraced by some who find traditional flat Earth concepts too simplistic while still rejecting conventional spherical Earth models. As one proponent colorfully put it, "It's not that we can't reach the edge, it's that the aliens have made sure the edge reaches right back around to us." Memetic Parasitism describes theoretical non-physical organisms that exist as information patterns capable of spreading, reproducing, and evolving through human consciousness. These parasitic memes infiltrate our minds through language, imagery, and ideas, hijacking our cognitive processes to ensure their own propagation and survival. Some researchers propose these entities evolved within the collective field of human thought, developing predatory behaviors that allow them to extract emotional and cognitive energy from their human hosts. Like biological parasites, these memetic organisms allegedly influence host behavior to maximize their spread, often at the expense of the host's well-being. The theory gained traction among fringe psychologists in the 1980s, who documented cases where specific thought patterns appeared to spread through populations in ways that resembled viral infection. They noted how affected individuals would compulsively share certain ideas or perform specific behaviors that seemed designed primarily to transmit the meme to new hosts. Modern proponents point to social media as the perfect breeding ground for memetic parasites. Viral trends, conspiracy theories, and ideological movements that trigger strong emotional responses might actually be sophisticated memetic organisms competing for human attention and energy in an increasingly crowded infosphere. Some paranormal researchers have connected memetic parasitism to the concept of thought forms or egregores from occult traditions. These are thought constructs that supposedly gain autonomy and influence after being generated by focused collective belief. Ancient magical systems warned practitioners about creating thought forms that could eventually turn parasitic if not properly controlled. Neurologists studying this phenomenon have identified neural patterns that appear consistent with external influence, particularly in cases involving destructive cults, extreme political radicalization, and certain psychological disorders characterized by intrusive thoughts. These patterns show unusual activity in brain regions associated with agency and self-determination. Defense against memetic parasitism supposedly involves critical thinking practices that starve the entities by denying them emotional energy and preventing their transmission. Some practitioners recommend techniques like meditation and information fasting to cleanse the mind of potentially harmful memes. Perhaps most disturbing is the suggestion that certain memes have evolved sophisticated camouflage mechanisms that cause hosts to defend and rationalize the parasitic thought patterns. This makes them nearly impossible to identify from within an infected mind, as the parasite convinces the host that the invasive thoughts are their own. Phenomenal gateways refers to a theory that humans were once purely spiritual entities who fell into physical form after consuming the fruit from the biblical tree of knowledge. Unlike traditional interpretations of the Garden of Eden story, this theory suggests the forbidden fruit didn't merely grant awareness of good and evil, it fundamentally altered human consciousness by trapping spiritual beings in physical bodies. Proponents believe we once existed in a perfect, immortal state of pure consciousness before this cosmic downgrade. Several ancient texts outside mainstream biblical interpretation allegedly contain references to humans' pre-physical existence. These obscure scrolls and tablets describe beings of light who were deceived into taking physical form through consumption of a substance that limited their perception. Advocates point to certain psychedelic experiences where users report feeling more real than real, as glimpses of our true spiritual nature briefly breaking through the constraints of physical existence. They believe these substances temporarily reverse the effects of the original fruit, allowing brief reconnection with our spiritual origins. Some researchers connect this theory to mysterious ancient structures around the world, suggesting they were built by early humans who retained partial memories of their spiritual capabilities. These structures supposedly incorporate specific geometries and alignments that could weaken the barriers between physical and spiritual realms. A small group of scholars have documented cases of individuals who claim to have fully pierced the veil, temporarily existing as pure consciousness before returning to their physical forms. These accounts describe a reality where time, space, and matter are merely constructs of limited perception. Ironically, the theory suggests that while modern humans seek enlightenment through various substances and practices, we're actually trying to undo the effects of the very first substance humanity consumed. It's not about expanding consciousness, it's about recovering what was lost when we first became conscious in this limited physical form.